Today, as promised, I want to bring you guys my brief thoughts on the two biggest headlines and upsets of the week. As the LA Valiant defeated the Vancouver Titans, and the Florida Mayhem finally picked up their second win against the Houston Outlaws, falling quickly, seeing how my other predictions fared across the rest of the matches. I think the biggest headline to come out of this week, funnily enough, came from the conclusion of this week's fixtures on Sunday, as LA Valiant sent the league and Twitter into a frenzy, as they beat the odds and handed the Vancouver Titans their first regular season loss of the season by a score of 3-1. Not for 1 second do I want to take anything away from the play of Kareev, as for a second straight series he was outstanding on Anna, which at times seemed to be in a league of its own. Nor the team's overall play around Shax is sombre. As we can see from these highlights, the team was clinical in their execution and follow-up of EMP to efficiently eradicate the Titans and send them back to their spawn, with particular focus on shutting down Bumper to the point where he had little to no impact. That said, I think it's just important not to overreact to this performance from the Valiant and write off Vancouver so early after this display, but we see a little more from both sides in their series next week. The main thing I'd emphasise is how poorly the Titans played, particularly in how they responded and looked to counter the Sombre Goats comp of LA. Unlike when playing Chengdu, the team looked a lot more panicked and on multiple occasions just looked to overthink how they retaliate with some unorthodox DPS comps we've rarely seen them run. They consequently, but unsurprisingly, looked poorly prepared and practiced as a result. When running Sombra themselves, not only has Seo Min-soo seemed uncomfortable with slow old build-up, a low success rate when using EMP, and a general issue in regard to his positioning, but the rest of the team, unlike the Valiant, just didn't seem to know how and when to properly follow up on this ultimate to achieve success, with fewer teamfights won as a result of its use. But this itself was also down to Seo Min-soo only catching the odd target or using it during lost teamfights a lot of the time. Moving forward, I think it's clear that unless there is some significant work and effort put into Seo Min-soo's Sombra, and the team more convincingly working to play around it, the Titans might be better off trying someone like Stitch in the lineup, or avoiding these compositions entirely in the short term, sticking to and committing to more familiar strategies that are far more reliable at bringing them success, rather than them opting into a fight that currently isn't weighted in their favour. Otherwise, they may need to sort themselves out quickly, as they're clearly the worst equipped of all the top teams right now, being able to handle and utilise Sombra comps to potentially becoming the meta picks of choice, with a team like the New York Excelsior clearly ahead of them in this regard. In many ways, this shocking end to the day's proceedings somewhat overshadowed the other massive headline from the day that makes up my second point of discussion, as the Florida Mayhem finally picked up their second win, and this time it was against the very informed Houston Outlaws. The Mayhem's first and only win up to this point had come in the second week of Stage 1 when facing the Philadelphia Fusion, so they took advantage of Boombox's absence to pick up what would have otherwise been an unlikely victory, often punishing Elk, who was forced at the last minute to fill the vacancy on a role he was unpracticed and unfamiliar with, especially given he's normally playing at the main support position, not the flex support one. That said, as a result, many including myself considered this a shallow victory and didn't really count it as one achieved of their own validation. This has now changed with their victory over the Outlaws. Florida put in a prolific and mature performance that was spurred on from great displays from their DPS duo of BQB and Sire player, as well as numerous clutch players from the Scrim God himself, Zephyr. But taking the whole series into consideration, I think it'd be hard to argue it wasn't rather sloppy, with members of both sides consistently falling during teamfights. And it's from this that I think we can understand how the Outlaws ended up losing. One of my and others' past criticism of Houston has been that they sometimes fall into the trap of becoming too dependent upon their ultimates to achieve progress in a map. But ultimately, this hinders their prolonged success. We again saw a similar issue crop up in this series, often seeing the team relying on the use of the EMP Shatter combo to win teamfights, whilst regularly throwing in a support ultimate to confirm this as well. This was further emphasised by what I felt was poor target focus and priority from the team as a whole, as unlike in their previous victories, they only appeared to be able to collect a couple of kills whilst utilising these fight-winning ultimates, whilst at the same time allowing their opponent's most dangerous threats to continue to apply pressure onto them, with Sire player rarely pressured. Whether this was down to a lack of preparation, given the history of Florida, or just a team having a bad day, it isn't a good sign. If they aren't on form, they seem likely to revert to their previous habits and mistakes, who were a large part of this team ending up 0-7 last stage, and whilst disastrous to their momentum and stage playoff aspirations in the short term, unless significantly worked upon, this defeat could signal a greater worry towards their outside chances of competing for a top 12 position, and this will need to be addressed very quickly. Thanks in part to these two surprising results, I ended one of the worst weeks of my predictions to date with an 8-8 record, just above my all-time worst of 7-9. The first couple of days had looked promising, as I sat at a comfortable 6-2 record, having only got both of Shanghai's results the wrong way round, as they were defeated by the Valiant before then responding in style with a victory over the Gladiators, both in close and competitive contests. But after this is where my predictions started to be kicked into the mud, as I surprisingly and disappointingly went 2-6 over the weekend, as I was penalised by the upset victories of the Valiant over Vancouver and Florida against Houston that I previously mentioned, alongside just hedging my bets on the wrong side of closely run affairs, with Philly, Hangzhou and Boston edging past their opponents Atlanta, Seoul and Paris respectively in 5-match series. And don't even ask why I thought Toronto would beat Guangzhou, before they were slaughtered 4-0, forcing me to rank them at the bottom of my power rankings after another dreadful display. Overall this week, whilst not very good for my predictions, proved at the very least to be very entertaining to watch, with far more competitive matches than expected, providing some unlikely winners, which made the week far more entertaining than had my predictions been a lot more accurate, as they have been detrimentally up to now. And with that, we reach the end of my brief pseudo-Stage 3 Week 3 review. I'd like to thank you for watching. I'll be returning with some Overwatch World Cup videos over the next couple of days, so if you enjoyed and don't want to miss out, please like, subscribe and follow me on Twitter for this continuing Overwatch League coverage and content, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.